novels in the true crime section. Episode 14, The Sins of the Father. Episode 14, The Sins of the Father. The phone call came at 2:15 on a Wednesday afternoon, right in the middle of Jade shelving horror novels in the true crime section. Margaret appeared at the end of the aisle with an expression that Jade had learned to interpret as somewhere between concerned and deeply amused. "Jade, dear, the preschool is online too. Something about Lucas and an incident." Jade's stomach dropped. Lucas was 3 years old now, attending a small Montessori preschool 3 mornings a week because Jade had insisted that son needed socialization with normal children. Freddie had argued that normal children were overrated and Lucas could socialize perfectly well in the dream realm, but Jade had won that particular battle. Now, taking the phone from Margaret with shaking hands, she was wondering if Freddie had been right. "Mrs. Kruger, this is Principal Davies. I'm calling because we've had a situation with Lucas today and we need you or your husband to come pick him up immediately." The word situation was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Jade's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. What happened? Is he hurt? No, he's not hurt, but there was an altercation with another student and the aftermath has been quite concerning. I'd rather discuss this in person. How quickly can you get here? 20 minutes. I'm leaving now. Jade barely remembered the drive to the lake on Montessori, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. Lucas had been doing so well at controlling his powers. The phasing had become deliberate rather than accidental. The shadow manipulation only happened when he was very emotional. And the dream walking, the ability to slip into and influence other people's dreams, that had only manifested a handful of times under controlled circumstances, with Freddie teaching him. Except now, something had clearly gone very wrong. She found Freddie already in the principal's office when she arrived, which meant he'd sensed the distress through their bond and materialized nearby. He was in his human form, looking like any other concerned father in jeans and a dark Henry, but Jade could see the tension in his shoulders, the predatory stillness that meant he was deciding whether something needed to be torn apart. Lucas sat beside him in a chair that was too big for his small frame, his legs swinging and not quite reaching the floor. Their son looked up when Jade entered, and his eyes were doing that shifting thing, blue to amber to silver, the colors bleeding into each other faster than usual, the sign of emotional distress. "Mommy," Lucas said, and his voice was small, frightened. "I didn't mean to." "We'll talk about it, baby. It's okay." Jade settled into the chair on his other side, sandwiching their son between them in unified parental protection. Then she looked at Principal Davies, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that currently looked deeply unsettled. What happened? Davies folded her hands on her desk, clearly choosing her words carefully. "This afternoon, during free play, Lucas and another student, Tyler, got into a disagreement over a toy. It escalated to pushing, which we dealt with by separating them and initiating our conflict resolution protocol. Both boys seemed fine. They apologized to each other. We moved on." She paused, and Jade could see her struggling with what came next. Then, during that time, Tyler started screaming. He woke up the entire class, completely hysterical, talking about nightmares and monsters, and specifically mentioning Lucas. Jade felt her stomach twist into knots. "Oh no, oh no, no, no." "Tyler's still in my office," Davies continued, gesturing toward a door behind her desk. "He won't calm down. Keep saying that Lucas did something to his dreams, made him see scary things, and he doesn't want to sleep ever again because the monsters will come back. I've called his parents, and they're on their way, but I need to understand what happened. Because frankly, Mrs. Kruger, Mr. Kruger, this is beyond my experience as an educator. Tyler is describing things with a level of detail that doesn't match normal childhood nightmares." "What kind of things?" Freddie asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Burning buildings, people with knives for fingers, a boiler room that felt real enough to make him feel heat. He said Lucas showed him where bad people go, and it was so scary, he wet himself." Davies looked at their son with a mix of concern and something that might have been fear. "Lucas, can you tell me what happened during that time?" Lucas looked at his parents, their shifting eyes wide and frightened. "Tyler pushed me really hard. He said I was stupid and weird, and my family was probably weird too. It made me angry, and when everyone was sleeping, I just wanted to show him that he shouldn't be mean to people. I didn't mean to make it scary. I just wanted him to understand." "Understand what, buddy?" Jade asked gently. "That there are worse things than me, that being mean is wrong." Lucas's voice got smaller. "I showed him Daddy's work, the place where Daddy used to stare at people. I thought Tyler would understand that being mean is bad, but he just got really scared, and now he won't stop crying." Freddie closed his eyes briefly, and Jade could feel the complex wash of emotions through their bond. Pride that his son had such control over dream manipulation at only 3 years old. Horror at what that manipulation had been used for. And underneath it all, a deep recognition that this was his fault. His legacy. His darkness manifesting in that child. "Principal Davies," Freddie said carefully. "My son has what you might call an overactive imagination. He's been exposed to some age-inappropriate content recently. Classic horror films that I watch, and I think he incorporated that into his play with Tyler. Children sometimes blur the line between reality and fantasy at this age." It was a good lie, smooth and plausible, but Davies wasn't buying it completely. "Mr. Kruger, Tyler is describing things with specificity that suggests more than just imagination. The details are too consistent, too vivid, and frankly, Lucas seems to have an unusual effect on other children. Several teachers have mentioned that the other kids treat him differently. They're drawn to him, but also slightly afraid of him. His presence changes the atmosphere of a room." "He's a sensitive child," Jade tried. "He picks up on emotions and responds to them in ways that can seem unusual, but I assure you, he's not doing anything deliberately harmful. Except he just gave another child what sounds like severe psychological trauma through a shared nap time." Davies' voice was firm now. "I want to believe this is explainable. I really do. But I need you to understand the position this puts the school in. We have a duty of care to all our students. If Lucas poses any kind of risk to the other children, even an unintentional one, we have to take action." "What kind of action?" Freddie's voice had gone very quiet, which meant he was seconds away from doing something dramatic and unhelpful. Jade put a warning hand on his arm. "We understand your concern, and will work with Lucas to make sure nothing like this happens again. Right, Lucas?" Their son nodded vigorously, tears starting to spill down his small face. "I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I promise. I'll be good." "I believe you want to be good," Davies said, her voice softening slightly. "But I need to discuss this with the school board. For now, I'm suspending Lucas for the remainder of the week. That gives us all time to process what happened and decide how to move forward. I'll be in touch by Monday with a decision about his enrollment status." The drive home was silent except for Lucas's quiet sniffling in the backseat. Jade and Freddie had agreed to regroup at the apartment before having any serious conversations, both of them needing space to process what had just happened. Once home, Jade took Lucas to his room and sat with him on his bed, surrounded by toys and books and glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. Their son looked so small and scared, his shifting eyes fixed on his hands. "Am I in trouble?" Lucas asked quietly. "You're not in trouble," Jade assured him, though that wasn't entirely true. But we need to talk about what you did. Lucas, you know that your abilities, the things you can do in dreams, they're special and powerful, and with that power comes responsibility. You can't use your abilities on other people without permission, especially not to scare them. But Tyler was mean. He pushed me and said bad things. I know, baby, and Tyler was wrong to do that, but what you did in response was also wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. When someone hurts you, you tell a teacher or you walk away. You don't use your powers to punish them. But Daddy punishes bad people, Lucas said, his voice taking on a stubborn edge. I've seen it, in the dream place. Daddy makes nightmares with people who are mean to you and me. He says that's protecting our family. Kate felt something cold settle in her chest, because Lucas wasn't wrong. Freddie did use his powers to punish people who threatened them, and their son had been watching, learning, absorbing the lesson that fear was an acceptable response to conflict. That's different, Jade tried, though even as she said it, she knew how weak it sounded. Daddy only does that in very specific circumstances, to people who are trying to hurt us, not to children who push us on the playground. But how do I know when it's okay and when it's not? It was a fair question, and Jade didn't have a good answer. How do you teach a child the ethics of supernatural violence? How do you explain that his father's protective brutality was justified while his own defensive nightmare was crossing a line? We're still figuring that out together, Jade admitted, but for now, the rule is simple. You don't use your dream powers on anyone without asking Daddy or me first. Not other kids, not teachers, not anyone. Can you agree to that? Lucas nodded slowly. Okay, I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't know it would be so scary for Tyler. I just wanted him to stop being mean. I know, baby, I know. Jade pulled him into a hug, feeling him burrow into her embrace. You're not a bad kid. You just made a mistake, and now we're going to help you learn from it. She left Lucas watching cartoons and found Freddie in their bedroom, standing at the window and staring out at nothing. His human form was flickering slightly at the edges, the demon underneath pressing close to the surface. He learned it from me, Freddie said, without turning around, using fear as a weapon, punishing people who cross him. That's all me, my darkness manifesting in our son. Freddie. Don't. He finally turned to face her, and his eyes were haunted. Don't tell me it's not my fault, or that Lucas is just being a kid. He walked another child from my boiler room, Jade. Showed him the place where I murdered people, where I tortured victims for decades. Our 3-year-old son weaponized my legacy because another kid pushed him. He didn't understand what he was doing. That's the problem. He should understand. He should know that what I did, what I am, is not something to emulate. It's not a tool for solving playground disputes. Freddie ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I thought I could keep those parts of me separate from him, that he'd inherit the power without the darkness. But that's not how this works, is it? The power and the darkness are the same thing. Jade crossed to him and took his hands, making him look at her. The power and the darkness are not the same thing. You've proven that. You still have all your abilities, all your strength, but you've redirected them toward protection instead of random violence. That's what we need to teach Lucas. Not to suppress what he is, but to choose how he uses it. And how do I teach him that when I'm still figuring it out myself? Freddie's voice cracked slightly. I've spent decades being a monster, Jade. You've reformed me, focused me, given me better reasons to use violence, but I'm still fundamentally the same thing I always was, a nightmare who hurts people. That's what our son is learning to be. No, Jade's voice was firm. What our son is learning is that power needs control, that abilities come with responsibility, and that sometimes we make mistakes, but we can learn from them and do better next time. That's not being a monster, that's being human. He's not entirely human. Neither are you anymore. You're something between, and so is he. And we're going to figure out together what that means and how to help him become the best version of whatever he is. Freddie pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Here. I don't know how to do this. I was never supposed to be a father. Wasn't supposed to have a legacy beyond fear and death. And now I have this beautiful, powerful child who looks at me like I hung the stars, and I'm terrified I'm going to ruin him. You're not going to ruin him, Jade said fiercely. We're not going to ruin him. But you're right that we need to be more intentional about what we're teaching him, starting now. That evening, after dinner and bedtime routines, Freddie sat down with Lucas in the nursery that had long since been converted into a proper bedroom. Jade stayed in the doorway, close enough to support, but giving him space for whatever conversation needed to happen. Buddy, we need to talk about what happened at school today, Freddie began, settling on the floor next to Lucas's bed. About the dream you showed Tyler. I already said sorry, Lucas said quietly, picking at his blanket. I know you did, and I'm not here to yell at you or punish you. I want to understand what you were thinking. When you decided to show Tyler the boiler room, what were you trying to accomplish? Lucas considered this, his small face serious. I wanted him to know that being mean is bad, that there are consequences for hurting people. You always say that people who hurt our family face consequences. I do say that, Freddie admitted, and I mean it. But Lucas, there are different kinds of consequences. When I talk about consequences for people who threaten us, I'm talking about adults who are trying to genuinely harm us, people who might hurt you or Mommy in serious ways. Tyler is a kid who pushed you over a toy. That's not the same thing. But it felt the same. It made me angry and hurt, and I wanted him to understand. I know, and that's normal. But the way you chose to make him understand, that wasn't appropriate. When you showed him the boiler room, you were using fear as a weapon, and fear is a very powerful weapon, but it's also dangerous. Once you make someone terrified, you can't take that back. Tyler is going to remember that nightmare for a long time, maybe forever. Is that really what you wanted? Lucas's eyes filled with tears. No. I just wanted him to stop being mean. I didn't want to give him forever bad dreams. I know, buddy. I know. Freddie pulled his son into his lap, holding him gently. Here's the thing. You have incredible power. More power than most people ever have. And with that power comes responsibility to use it carefully. You can do amazing things, Lucas. You can walk in dreams, manipulate reality, protect people you love. But you can also cause terrible harm if you're not careful. That's what I'm trying to teach you. But you cause harm sometimes, Lucas pointed out with 3-year-old logic. I've seen you make scary dreams for bad people. You're right. I do. And that's something we need to talk about too. Freddie took a deep breath, and Jade could see him choosing his words carefully. Before I met your mother, before you were born, I did a lot of bad things. I hurt people because I was angry and damaged, and I thought causing fear would make me feel powerful. It did make me feel powerful for a while, but it also made me a monster. You're not a monster, Lucas said immediately. I am though. I'm a nightmare demon. That's literally what I am. But I'm also your father and your mother's husband, and I'm trying very hard to be a good version of a monster instead of a bad version. That means I only use my powers in very specific ways now. To protect our family, to stop people who are trying to hurt others. But I don't use them to punish people just because I'm angry or they were mean to me. That's the difference. How do we know when it's protecting and when it's just being mean? It was the same question he asked Jade, and Freddy struggled with it just as much. That's what I'm going to teach you. Over time, as you get older and your powers get stronger, I'm going to show you how to control them. How to decide when using them is right and when it's wrong. But for now, the rule is simple. You don't use your dream abilities on anyone unless Mommy or I say it's okay. Not other kids, not adults, nobody. Can you follow that rule? Lucas nodded against Freddy's chest. I can follow it. I promise. Good. And if you're ever confused about whether something is okay or not, you come ask me. I'll always be honest with you about it, even if the answer is complicated. Daddy? Lucas's voice was very small. Am I a monster too, like you? Freddy's arms tightened around his son, and Jade saw his expression crack with emotion. No. You're not a monster, Lucas. You're something new, something better. You've got power like me, but you've also got your mother's heart and her sense of right and wrong. You get to choose what you become, and I'm going to make sure you have all the tools and knowledge you need to make good choices. Even when the choices are hard. Especially when the choices are hard. They sat like that for a while, father and son, sharing a moment of understanding that felt fragile and precious. Finally, Freddy helped Lucas get settled into bed, pulling the covers up and making sure the night light was on. I love you, buddy, Freddy said, pressing a kiss to his son's forehead, no matter what, even when you make mistakes. You're my son, and I'm going to help you learn to be the best version of yourself, monster powers and all. I love you too, Daddy. Shadows danced across the ceiling in gentle patterns, soothing rather than scary, and Lucas's eyes drifted closed. Freddy stayed until he was sure their son was asleep, then joined Jade in the hallway. That was good, Jade said softly. What you told him, about being a good version of a monster instead of a bad version. That's exactly what he needed to hear. I meant every word. But Jade, we have a real problem. Our son is 3 years old and already capable of traumatizing other children through shared dreams. What happens when he's 5, or 10, or a teenager with impulse control issues and reality warping powers? Then we stay vigilant. We teach him. We guide him. The same thing every parent does, just with higher stakes. Jade took his hand. You're already doing better than you think. Most supernatural beings don't worry about ethics or consequences. The fact that you're questioning yourself, that you want better for Lucas, that matters. Does it? Because from what I'm understanding, I passed my worst traits to our son. My violence, my tendency to use fear as a tool, my complete lack of proportional response to threats. You've also passed me your strength, your fierce protective instincts, your ability to love completely despite being something that wasn't supposed to love at all. Jade cupped his face with both hands. You're not ruining him, Freddy. You're teaching him, and sometimes teaching means acknowledging your own mistakes so he doesn't repeat them. You have way too much faith in me. I have exactly the right amount of faith in you. Over the next few days, Freddy threw himself into researching how to train a child with supernatural abilities. He consulted Koga, asking the AI for information about child psychology and development. He reached out through the dream realm to other entities, trying to find anyone who'd successfully raised a powerful supernatural child without creating a monster. The results were not encouraging. Apparently most nightmare demons don't reproduce, Freddy reported to Jade one evening while she was grading inventory sheets from the bookstore, and the few that do usually just abandon the offspring to figure it out themselves, or eat them. Eating is not on the table, Jade said firmly. Obviously. But the point is, there's no manual for this, no guide to raising a half-human, half-mad child with reality warping abilities, or making it up as we go. Welcome to parenthood. Everyone's making up as they go. We just have weirder stakes than most. Freddy had started taking Lucas into the dream realm every night for what he called training, but what was really just careful, controlled practice. Teaching their son to build dreams instead of nightmares, to create beauty instead of horror, to understand the full range of what his powers could accomplish. Jade would join in sometimes, watching father and son work together in spaces that defied physics. Freddy would demonstrate how to shape dreamscapes, and Lucas would copy him with the quick learning of childhood, building castles from clouds, making gardens that bloomed with impossible flowers, creating entire worlds with nothing but will and imagination. Good, Freddy encouraged when Lucas managed to construct a small fortress that looked almost solid. You're getting better at holding the form. Now try adding detail. What color are the walls? Blue, Lucas decided, like Mommy's favorite. The fortress shifted, stones turning to that particular royal blue that Jade loved. Freddy smiled, genuine and proud. Perfect. See how you can make things beautiful just as easily as scary. That's important. Your powers aren't just weapons, they're tools for creation too. Can I show this to Tyler, as an apology? I can make him a good dream instead of a bad one. Freddy and Jade exchanged glances. It was a generous impulse, and Lucas's heart was clearly in the right place. But entering Tyler's dreams again, even with good intentions, felt like crossing a line they'd just established. How about this, Jade suggested. You keep practicing your good dreams, get really good at making beautiful things, and if Tyler ever specifically asks you for a good dream, then maybe. But we don't enter people's dreams without permission. That's a rule that doesn't have exceptions. Even if we're trying to help. Even then, Freddy confirmed. Consent matters, buddy. In dreams, in real life, in everything. You don't use your powers on someone unless they agree to it. That's one of the most important lessons I can teach you. It was a strange lesson for a nightmare demon to be teaching, and Jade loved him more for it. This was growth. Evolution. Freddy taking his own dark history and using it to give his son better guidance than he'd ever received. Monday arrived with a phone call from Principal Davies. Jade took it in the back office at the bookstore, her stomach in knots. Mrs. Kruger, I discussed the incident with our board and with Tyler's parents. I'm afraid we've decided that it's in everyone's best interest if Lucas doesn't return to the Lakecorns. Jade had been expecting this, but it still hurt. I understand. Has Tyler recovered? He's seeing a child psychologist to work through the nightmares. His parents are understandably upset. They're not pursuing any legal action, but they've requested that Lucas have no contact with Tyler going forward. Of course. We'll respect that. Jade paused. For what it's worth, we've been working with Lucas extensively on appropriate behavior and emotional regulation. What happened was a one-time lapse in judgment that won't be repeated. I believe you, and I want you to know this wasn't an easy decision. Lucas is a bright, creative child when he's not having incidents, but we have to prioritize the safety and well-being of all our students. I hope you understand. I do. Thank you for calling. Jade hung up and immediately texted Freddy. Lucas is expelled. We need to figure out alternative education. His response was instant. Already researching homeschool options. Also considering building him a school in the dream realm. Please tell me you're joking about the dream school. Only partially joking. We'll discuss when you get home. That evening, they sat down together to make a plan. Lucas was asleep, shadows gently dancing across his bedroom walls, and Jade and Freddy were at the kitchen table with laptops and notepads and coffee that was going cold. Homeschooling is the obvious choice, Freddy said. We control the environment, the curriculum, the social interactions. No risk of him accidentally traumatizing classmates. But also, no normal socialization, Jade countered. He needs to learn how to interact with regular kids, how to exist in the human world without standing out. If we isolate him completely, he'll never develop those skills. Maybe we don't want him to develop those skills. Maybe we accept that he's not meant to exist fully in the human world. He's half human, Freddy. That part of him deserves development too. They argued in circles for an hour, neither willing to fully concede. Finally, Jade threw up her hands in frustration. Okay, compromise. We homeschool for now, but we find activities where he can interact with other kids in controlled settings. Sports, art classes, library programs, things where there's supervision and structure, but he still gets to be around children his age. And if he has another incident, then we deal with it. But we can't lock him away from the world just because he has powers. That's not fair to him in Congaree. Fair? Freddy's voice rose slightly. You know what's not fair? Our son potentially ruining another child's life because he can't control his abilities. What happened with Tyler could happen again, Jade. Worse, even. As Lucas gets older and stronger, the potential for damage increases exponentially. So what's your solution? Keep him isolated forever? Raise him entirely in the dream realm, where the only social interactions he has are with nightmare entities? That's not a life, Freddy. That's a prison. It's protection. For him and for everyone around him. It's fear. You're afraid of what he might become if we don't control every aspect of his life. But that kind of control creates the exact thing you're trying to prevent. The child who feels like a monster, who never learns healthy boundaries or appropriate outlets, who only knows isolation and shame. Freddy stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You don't understand. You can't understand. You're human. You never had to live with the knowledge that you're fundamentally dangerous, that everything about you is a threat to the people around you. That's my reality. And now, it's Lucas's reality too. I'm trying to protect him from making the first of my same mistakes I did. By making different mistakes? Jade stood too, following him. Freddy, I get that you're scared. I'm scared too. Our son has world-breaking power in a 3-year-old body. That's terrifying. But we can't let fear drive every decision. We have to trust that the work we're doing, the training and guidance and love, that it's enough. That he's going to be okay. And if it's not enough, if we fail and he hurts someone, or worse, then we deal with it together, as a family. But we don't give up on him having a life just because there's risk involved. Every parent faces risk. Ours is just more dramatic. They stood there in the dim kitchen, the weight of parenthood pressing down on both of them. This was the hard part, the part nobody prepared you for. Making decisions that could shape who your child became, knowing you might be wrong, doing your best anyway. Finally, Freddy turned to her, and his expression was raw. I'm terrified of fucking this up, of turning our son into what I was, or worse, or worse. I know, I'm terrified too, but we're in this together. You're not alone in trying to guide him. And Freddy, Jade took his hands. You're already doing better than you think. The fact that you're questioning yourself, that you want better for Lucas, that you're willing to confront your own darkness to give him light, that's what matters. That's what's going to make the difference. You keep saying that, because it's true, and because you need to hear it until you believe it. Freddy pulled her close, and they stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other, remembering that they were partners in this impossible task of raising an impossible child. Okay, Freddy said finally, we try your way, homeschool with structured social activities, but I'm monitoring every interaction. And the first sign of problems, we reevaluate. That's all I'm asking. They spent the rest of the evening planning curriculum, researching local programs for children, and making lists of rules and guidelines for Lucas. By the time they fell into bed, exhausted and worried, but united, they had the skeleton of a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a new routine. Jade cut her hours at the bookstore to part-time so she could focus on homeschooling Lucas. Freddy took over more of the Dream Realm training, working with their son every night on control and ethics and the fine line between protection and aggression. They enrolled Lucas in a Saturday morning art class at the local community center, a small group of kids his age, supervised by a very patient teacher named Miss Carla. The first week was nerve-wracking, both parents hovering nearby in case anything went wrong. But Lucas was careful, almost too careful, monitoring his own reactions and immediately removing himself if he felt upset. He's overcompensating, Jade observed, watching their son sit quietly at his art table while other children played loudly around him. He's so afraid of having another incident that he's shutting himself down completely. Better than the alternative, Freddy said, but he looked troubled too. After class, they took Lucas out for ice cream, and Jade gently asked how it had gone. It was fine, Lucas said, his voice neutral. Just fine? Did you make anything cool? I painted a flower. Miss Carla said it was good. Did you talk to any of the other kids? Lucas shook his head. Ed didn't want to. What if I made them scared again? Jade and Freddy exchanged looks over their son's head. This was the problem they hadn't anticipated. In trying to teach Lucas control, they'd accidentally taught him shame. Their son was learning to be afraid of himself. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Jade confronted Freddy about it. We're making him ashamed of his powers, of what he is. That's not the answer. I'm teaching him caution, respect for his abilities. That's not the same as shame. Isn't it? He's 3 years old and already terrified of his own nature. He's isolating himself from other children because he thinks he's dangerous. Does that sound healthy to you? It sounds safe. Safe for who? Not for Lucas. He's miserable, Freddy. Can't you see that? Freddy was quiet for a long moment. Then he slumped against the couch, looking defeated. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm trying to teach him control without crushing his spirit, but apparently I'm failing at both. Everything I do either makes him reckless or makes him shut down. There's no middle ground. Maybe that's because you're approaching it from a place of fear instead of confidence. Jade settled beside him. You keep teaching him about all the ways his powers can go wrong, about the damage he can cause, about why he needs to be careful. But have you taught him about the good things his abilities can do, the ways he can use them to help people, to create beauty, to make the world better? I've tried. In the dream realm, we practice creating good dreams. But you frame it as control, as limiting the bad. What if instead you framed it as expansion, as developing the good? Lucas needs to know that his powers aren't just a curse he has to manage. They're a gift he gets to explore. Freddy stared at her, and she could see the gears turning. You're saying I'm projecting my own relationship with my abilities onto him. I'm saying that you learned to see your powers as weapons because that's what they were used for decades. But Lucas doesn't have that history. His powers are a blank slate. What if we write a different story? One where nightmare abilities are just another form of magic, neutral until directed, capable of great harm or great good, depending on how they're used. That's very optimistic. That's very true. Think about it, Freddy. Your powers aren't inherently evil. You've proven that. You use them to protect now, to build dream realms for our family, to create beauty and safety and home. Why can't Lucas learn to do the same without first going through decades of violence? It was a fair point, and Freddy couldn't argue with it. So what do you suggest? We shift focus. Yes, teach and control. Yes, establish boundaries. But also celebrate what he can do. Encourage experimentation in safe environments. Let him see his abilities as something amazing instead of something terrifying. He's going to have them his whole life. He should enjoy them. The next day, Freddy took Lucas into the dream realm with a new approach. Instead of practicing restraint and control, they practiced creation and joy. I want you to build me the coolest playground you can imagine, Freddy said. No limits. No worrying about whether it's possible or safe. Just pure imagination. What would your perfect playground look like? Lucas's eyes lit up with an excitement Jade hadn't seen in weeks. Anything I want? Anything. Go wild. What emerged over the next hour was extraordinary. Lucas built a playground that existed on multiple levels, connected by slides that defied gravity and swings that launched you between dimensions. There were climbing structures made of solidified starlight and sandboxes filled with actual stardust. A merry-go-round that spun through time, showing different eras with each rotation. Monkey bars that stretched into infinity. It was impossible and wonderful and absolutely perfect. This is incredible, buddy, Freddy said, genuinely awed. You built all this? With your help, Lucas said modestly. You showed me how to make the structures stable. I gave you some pointers, but the creativity, the vision, that's all you. Freddy knelt down to his son's level. This is what I want you to understand. Your powers, they're not just about control or restraint. They're about creation, about making impossible things real, about bringing joy and beauty into the world. You can build entire universes in here, Lucas. And out there, in the waking world, you can use your abilities to help people dream better, sleep peacefully, feel safe. That's the real gift. But I can also make nightmares, hurt people, like I did to Tyler. Yes, you can. But that doesn't mean you will. Just because you have the ability to cause harm doesn't mean you're obligated to use it. You get to choose. Every time. And I'm going to make sure you have all the tools and knowledge to choose well. Lucas was quiet, processing this. Then, Daddy, do you ever regret having your powers? I used to. When I was alive, before I became what I am now, I wished I was normal. When I first died and became a nightmare demon, I reveled in the power, but I was also trapped by it. It defined everything I was. Freddy paused, choosing his words carefully. But now, with you and your mother, I don't regret it. Because these powers let me protect my family in ways normal people can't. They let me build you this playground and create a palace for your mother and make sure both of you are safe in ways that transcend normal reality. So no, I don't regret it anymore. I've learned to be grateful for it. I want to be grateful too, Lucas said, not scared. Then we'll work on that together, starting now. They spent hours in the dream playground, just playing. Father and son racing down impossible slides and launching off swings that defy physics, laughing and building and enjoying abilities that in other hands might have been terrifying, but here were just magic. When they finally returned to the waking world, Jade was waiting up despite the late hour. She took one look at both of them, at Freddy's expression of cautious hope and Lucas's genuine happiness, and knew something had shifted. Good session? She asked. The best, Freddy confirmed. We built a playground, and some other things too. Like what? Like a new understanding of what it means to have power, and how to use it for more than just defense or violence. Freddy helped Lucas into his pajamas while their son chatted about the playground and everything they built. I've been teaching him from a place of fear. You were right about that. But tonight we practiced from a place of joy, and it made all the difference. After Lucas was tucked in, Freddy and Jade returned to their bedroom. They went through their nighttime routine in comfortable silence, both processing the shift that had occurred. Thank you, Freddy said as they settled into bed, for pushing back on my approach, for making me see that I was projecting my own damage onto him. You weren't wrong to teach him caution, Jade said, but you're right that balance matters. He needs to understand both the danger and the beauty of what he can do. We're gonna have to keep adapting. As he gets older, as his powers grow, we'll face new challenges, different ethical questions, harder choices about what to teach him and how to guide him. Probably, but we'll figure it out, together, one playground at a time. Freddy pulled her close, and they lay there in the darkness, holding each other while their son slept peacefully down the hall. The shadows in their bedroom danced gently, responding to Lucas's dreams. Good dreams tonight, full of impossible playgrounds, and laughter, and joy. He's going to be okay, Jade said softly. I know you're worried. I know you see yourself in him, and that terrifies you. But Lucas isn't you, Freddy. He's something new, something better, and we're giving him everything he needs to become whatever he's meant to be. You have a lot of faith in us. I have faith in love, in choosing each other, in doing the hard work of growth and change. That's what's going to make the difference for Lucas. Not our powers or our abilities or our careful training, just the fact that he's loved fiercely and completely by parents who want better for him than Ludder's plowed over to than they had for themselves. When did you become so wise? I married a nightmare demon and had his baby. Wisdom was a survival requirement. Freddy laughed, the sound rough but genuine. Fair point. They drifted towards sleep, exhausted but hopeful. The journey of raising Lucas was just beginning. There would be more incidents, more challenges, more difficult conversations about power and responsibility and the fine line between protection and control. But they had something that most parents of supernatural children didn't: partnership, communication, a willingness to question their own methods and adapt when needed. And love. So much love that it sometimes felt like its own kind of power, shaping reality just as surely as any nightmare ability. Lucas was going to be okay. They were all going to be okay, because they chose each other, every day, in every world. And that choice, that fierce commitment, was the strongest magic of all. The dream demon and his queen, raising the prince of nightmares to be something unprecedented, something beautiful and powerful and good. Despite the darkness they came from, despite the sins of the father that might have doomed another child. And not this one, not Lucas. He had two parents who refused to let their past define his future, who were willing to confront their own demons, literal and metaphorical, to give him a better path. And that made all the difference. In the nursery, shadows spelled out words in dream language, protective incantations and promises and fierce declarations of love. Freddy's subconscious still on guard, still protecting, still making sure his son knew he was safe. Because that's what fathers did, especially nightmare fathers who were learning to be more than just fear incarnate, who were learning that the greatest power wasn't the ability to cause terror, but the courage to be vulnerable, to teach, to guide, to love. The sins of the father didn't have to become the destiny of the son, not if the father acknowledged those sins, learned from them, and chose to pass on something better instead. And Freddy Krueger, the Springwood slasher, nightmare demon, and dream realm king, was choosing better. Every day, every moment, every lesson taught from hard-won wisdom and desperate hope. He was choosing to be not just what he was, but what his son needed him to be, and in the process, becoming more than he'd ever imagined possible, more than just a nightmare, more than just a monster. A father, a teacher, a guide through darkness and light, both. And that was the greatest transformation of all. The sins of the father, acknowledged and confronted and ultimately transcended by the fierce determination to give his child a different story. The better story, one written in love instead of fear, in creation instead of destruction, in hope instead of horror. The Prince of Nightmares would grow up knowing his power, but also his choice, understanding his abilities, but also his responsibility, capable of terrible things, but choosing beautiful ones instead. Because his father had shown him the way, not through perfection, but through growth, through honest reckoning with his own darkness and the decision to shine light for his son instead. That was the legacy that mattered, not the murders or the nightmares or the decades of violence, but this moment, this choice, this love. The sins of father, redeemed by the son he chose to raise right, the nightmare who learned to dream, the monster who became a man, who became a father, who became something entirely new. All because he chose love, all because she chose him, all because they built something impossible together and refused to let it break. And their son would carry that forward, that legacy of choosing light even when darkness was easier, of using power for creation even when destruction was simpler, of being more than what you were born to be because someone loved you enough to show you how. The Prince of Nightmares, learning his powers, making his mistakes, finding his path, guided by parents who refused to let him stumble alone, who caught him when he fell and taught him to fly when he rose. That was the real story, not the incident at school or the trauma caused or the expulsion that followed, but what came after, the reckoning and the growth and the fierce determination to do better. To be better, together, as a family, in every world, through every challenge, building a future from the ashes of the past, one careful lesson at a time. The sins of the father transformed by love into the strengths of the son. That was the miracle, that was the magic, that was a story, written in shadows and light, in fear overcome and hope embraced. And it was only just beginning.